We're here today with Brian Cross, who's running for the East Naples Fire District. Welcome, Brian. If you would take a minute or two here and introduce yourself to everybody and talk a little bit about your background.
Not a problem. My name is Brian Cross. I was born and raised in Naples, Florida. My father, Oliver Cross, owned a barbershop on 5th Avenue, Oliver's Barbershop, that's been there for about 35 years. My mother, Nancy Rossi, then Cross, was a nurse that worked at NCH and then was the head health administrator for the Collier County Jail for years before they retired up to North Carolina. I have 4 brothers and sisters. I went to college at the University of Central Florida in Orlando and got a degree in political science, graduated magna cum laude, and then left to pursue law school at the University of Florida. I returned to Naples in 2008 after law school and began practicing civil law, civil litigation, and business law at Salvatore Wood, Buckle & Weidmiller, and now I'm a partner at Godey, Adamczyk & DeBost in Naples, Florida. I was elected in 2012 to the East Naples Fire Commission by a close three-way vote and have served 2 years on the commission board. Very proud of the service that we've been able to accomplish in 2 years with running on a pro-consolidation model. And we are less than 60 days, less than 45 days from the residents of Golden Gate and East voting on a full consolidation. And if re-elected, my primary goal is to continue to do what I've done so far. Increase services by increasing from BLS to getting an ALS place off the ground and running East Naples. Continue to consolidate countywide with North Naples and with EMS, so that the taxpayers can, hopefully in the near future or not too long off future, pay a lower millage rate countywide and have a single independent fire and medical rescue district that provides services to all residents. I think we've seen the benefits of that. I know there's been a debate over the years about, consolidation, is it good, is it bad? I think it's pretty simple that it's good. I mean, obviously, you don't need 7 chiefs and 7 assistant chiefs and, 314 assistant chiefs countywide. Whenever you have multiple organizations, you have certain administrative functions that have to be carried out by each district, and if you can combine them, you reduce the duplication of efforts and you're able to save money, as we've seen in roughly the $700,000 plus that we've saved just since we've consolidated operations between Golden Gate and East. So I think that if you continue to push that forward, we've seen response times go down. There's nothing that tells me that it won't continue to be better when it's a fully consolidated district like you see in many of the other large cities or metropolitan areas, municipalities. I mean, I think the system we have is outdated, it's archaic. It's been kept there because of the little fiefdoms and the people that are able to benefit from it, meaning all of the administrative and staff jobs and all of the commissioners as well, that each have 5 or 3 commissioners on a board and they each get paid a nominal amount that they get health insurance. And I think if you put all that together, you reduce tons of money over time, millions and millions of dollars over the next 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years for the residents of Collier County. So that's my goal.
As far as consolidation goes and how it might affect response time, are you expecting that to have any effect with response time?
Yes, it has had that effect. We've seen it cut it down. I mean, we've gone from 6.6 minutes for East and Golden Gate to 6.3 in the most recent study. So we've seen it cut down. I think you're going to see that in the spirit of consolidation. I know that the city of Naples has kind of taken a step back to slow down. They haven't ruled out the closest response, but they have their own interests for their own residents they have to consider, and they want to see how it starts to work and plays out. I'm confident that the leaders of the city will come to that, but when you start to see those things evolve, you see consolidation, you see the benefits of placing different apparatuses and other stations. I'm proud of the agreement that we've come to with EMS, in which we've been able to put EMS medic units in fire stations and fire trucks in EMS stations, like Station 75 right by my house where I live. Just last week there was a gentleman on Charlemagne Boulevard who collapsed. He was unresponsive, didn't have a pulse. The medic unit was out. A Golden Gate fire truck that was servicing in East Naples responded to an East Naples resident, showed up, administered electric shock twice, CPR, brought the guy back to life, and then the medic got there and they rode him and transported him down. I mean, that's an example of consolidation. I mean, there's a pretty solid chance that guy wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for consolidation. And not just, you know, the argument of, well, what is it doing for East? Well, there's a Golden Gate firefighter that saved an East Naples resident's life. Now that's a small example, but across the board we've seen those examples come to life in the last year or two. And when you save hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, you increase response times, you enhance services from basic life support to advanced life support. I mean, we now have our districts working with Tober, getting people certified. Yeah, there's been some slow bumps in the road with training, and you know, those things happen. You know, these are guys that haven't been allowed to administer drugs and life-saving treatments for years. They're going back through the training, they're committed to doing it. But when you hear about in the past that firefighters would show up and had they had this simple drug that they could have saved this guy's life, but because of politics, let's be real, it was politics, we weren't able to get those negotiated. And I pride the EMS, the leadership, Dr. Tober, and you know, our chief, our commissioners, our firefighters more than anything, with the commitment to, you know, increase those services and get them back to where they really should be. I mean, if you have a paramedic who's certified who can do it, there's no reason that they all shouldn't be able to all do it. The best fire and medical response districts in the world are shown to be ones that integrate EMS and fire into one. And that's where we have to get to for the residents of Collier County.
So beyond the consolidation of, say, East Naples and Gold Gate, or maybe even the fire services beyond that, you would favor bringing EMS under that umbrella eventually as well? With
I do.
With transport?
I do. And I have talked to Collier County commissioners who I believe are in support of it too. I mean, it just makes too much sense not to in the long run. I mean, I think that there's certainly cost savings and synergy there, but when you have people that are cross-trained and are trained in the same areas of medicine, paramedic, whether they're a firefighter or just a pure paramedic or an EMT, there's no reason that we shouldn't be sharing trucks, sharing command, sharing resources, sitting on the same apparatuses, and having the same ability to use the same skill set to save a life. There's not a person in Collier County that is going to sit there and say, well, if I'm unconscious, I don't want a paramedic wearing this red uniform to do it. I only want this paramedic to do it. All they care about is, are you trained? Can you save my life? And how quick can you get there if I need you? And that's where consolidation comes in. I mean, it's not rocket science. That's what it kind of surprises me so much, that everybody over the years has sat there and said, you know, consolidation, will it work? Look at the private sector. Look at the world. Consolidations through mergers do increase efficiencies. I understand in the public sector there's a not-for-profit and there's a need to put life ahead of dollars, and that's a certain thing. But you can't do that to the tone that you stick your head in the sand like an ostrich and say, well, the only way we can do this is if we have 7 different districts, 7 different chiefs, 7 different HR directors, 7 different benefits coordinators. That admin side of it is where I see the mass consolidation, where it can really cut cost. The firefighters are the ones, and the paramedics and EMTs are the ones who actually save the lives. But the cost reduction stuff, where I see the redundancies, is in the bureaucracies of it.
You mentioned politics getting in the way of things sometimes. When the city declined to join in with the closest units response system, at least for now, it brought up an issue of East Naples covering parts of the city that are actually physically closer to an East Naples fire station, and whether East Naples should be compensated for that. Should East Naples be compensated for that, given that the city's not cooperating on the other front?
Well, and again, I'm not going to jump on the city. I mean, the cities are elected the representatives of their people, and they have to look out for what they believe is in their people's best interests. I think that was kind of a jump back, you know, response from some of my fellow commissioners about, you know, we need to, if they're not going to play, then they need to step up and, you know, compensate us. I am for that. I would like to not make that a hot button issue right now. I'd like to just continue to encourage the city to work with the sheriff's office and work with the different districts to figure out how we can make closest unit response. I mean, the bottom line is it's a principle that should not be disputed. I understand that there can be questions about, well, is the technology there? When is it in place? Do we want to make sure that everybody has the tracking that they need to have to make sure that it benefits everybody? And if there is a difference in resources, and meaning that, look, we can do that with the city, but we need to compensate them a little more because they have more of this that they're going to be sacrificing so that we have enough close to them so their residents don't face any downfall, we can work those things out. That's not complicated. But if that doesn't move forward, then I do believe that yes, if one district or municipality annexes part of another one's, but yet they can't service it with the fire response because they can't get around to it, we have no problem doing it. I mean, we have stations down there, but our residents should not be depleted of financial resources to serve other residents. Now, are we going to send somebody there if there's a 911 call no matter what? Absolutely. There's no commissioner or anybody that's going to say, well, sorry, they're not going to reimburse us. But we do need to sit at the table and be realistic. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want those areas to be serviced by East Naples, we're just asking for reimbursement to cover the resources that our residents lost. We're not saying we want to make a profit off of it, but there needs to be some adjustment. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think that when you see consolidation pass as overwhelming as it's going to pass, I think the message is going to be clear to the city, to North Naples, and to all independent and dependent districts that, look, the people, the facts, the evidence show that consolidation is the way to go. So let's, like I said 2 years ago, there's no clear way on how we're going to consolidation, but you make a goal, you set it, and you just go do it. There's going to be bumps. The goal is close to response. Let's agree to do it. If we can't get it implemented for 18, 24 months or whatever it may be, that's fine, but let's get it done. Let's move towards the consolidation, and there's no reason not to. I mean, I've yet to hear, and maybe one of you guys can educate me because you've probably heard from all the candidates, I've yet to hear a good argument against it other than we just don't know, we haven't seen enough details. Well, look, you can sit there and play the clouds in the sky defeatism argument, but what you do know is it saves money and response times go down. That's what we're about, and it's going to eventually lower taxes. The arguments against it I've yet to see.
Well, how about this one? East Naples doesn't have a lot of debt. Golden Gate has a good bit of debt. They combine together. How do East Naples residents cope with this new debt they've taken on? Is it worth it to them to do so?
That's a good question, but it starts from a false premise. There isn't a taking on a ton of debt. You have to look at the financials and look at them in a clear way, and which is one of the main reasons that I ran is because I think of myself as someone who's fiscally conservative, and I like to see people run things in an efficient, operative manner. Golden Gate has $3.3 million in reserves. That's $3.3 million in cash that would not be benefiting the East Naples residents. We have about $5 million reserves. You take that reserves, you hear this debt like it's an unpaid credit card bill that somebody bought their TV and now TV's broke and they had to pay off the debt. No. It was secured by fire trucks and secured by 3 separate facilities, fire stations, one of which is now the headquarters of both districts. You take the value of those reserves, you take the value of all of those pieces of real property and those buildings and structures, you're way positive in terms of that debt. Not to mention, let's look at the capital structures of both districts. Golden Gate has much better quality facilities and capital structures. East Naples has much more capital outlay needs. We have neglected stations that need serious capital improvements. If we do not have a consolidation pass, we're going to have to build a headquarters in East Naples. That's going to cost several million dollars. That's going to come out of either reserves or we're going to have to figure a way to bid in our budget. So there's $2 million that we quote unquote benefit from consolidating with Golden Gate. We're going to have to improve 3 stations that have major renovations needs that are in bad shape. Talk to any of the firefighters, just go look at them. They've been neglected, need to be improved. Golden Gate also has all the value of its apparatuses, its property, its equipment. So it's not like you can just look at it and say, well, you're taking on the debt for the station they built out there and the one they built off Davis, so, well, what about all the assets you're getting? What about the employees, the fact that we're going to be able to have the staffing? The bottom line is, if you look at it, both districts are saving a tremendous amount of money in a very short period. We're not looking at this, and we shouldn't be looking at this as is, how do we make this decision, but only think about 1 year's worth of data? The decisions that we're making are, take that 1 year's worth of data and look at it 1, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 years out there. $700,000 a year, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars that's going to stay in my pocket, in your pocket as an East Naples resident, that wouldn't have stayed in but for this consolidation. Another thing that we're going to have to do is, I just recently negotiated with a private landowner. We did a land swap, which is under contract and set to close with 5.9 acres we had off of Collier Boulevard that prior commissioners bought that we don't really have access to because there's no bridge that Southwest Florida will approve for us to get over. So we basically have landlocked 5.9 acres where we're going to need a station with all the new homes that are being built off of Sable Palm and Collier. Well, we negotiated a land swap that gave us frontage on Sable Palm of 1.25 acres that has going to have the utilities hub that we're going to have to put a station there if we don't consolidate. If we do consolidate, we're not going to have that need right now. We may need that, we are going to need that in the future if we see the number of houses they're expecting to build between Golden Gate and Marco Island. I mean, my The reality is it's going to be fully built out all the way down there in the next 30, 40, 50 years, because there's not many places left other than the estates and out towards Immokalee where you have raw dirt still. So you look at all of those things, not just, you know, the fire argument that says they have $5 million in debt. Well, they also have 3 facilities, 2 big buildings, the station and the admin headquarters out on Collier, and then the one on Davis and Collier, which is going to be a station. They also have several fire trucks they got for that debt. So it's not like you just take debt. You look at it equals on the balance sheet, it washes out, especially with $3.5 million in cash reserves. We're now going to have, I think it's $8 million in cash reserves between the 2 districts once we combine. Reserves go up, taxes can come down, and the millage rate can come down over time. And that's one of our goals.
Can you talk a little bit about your role in recruiting other candidates to run in the East Naples Fire District races? Some of the other candidates have indicated that you asked them to run or suggested they run.
Yeah, well, you know, Todd Allen was an attorney that used to work with me, and he and I worked together in litigation and had talked about it, and he had always had a desire, he said, to try and get involved somewhere and do something. And I said, well, there's seats open for fire commission. You know, you can run for that, and he decided to run for it. We no longer work together. I know Stan Bunner, who is a partner at my firm, who was my old boss actually at my first firm when I started. Is a military guy who's been in the military, I think, for 20-something years, and he's nearing the end of his service, and he had been talking about some other public or civic duty that he would like to do to replace what he's been doing for the country for the past several years. I mentioned to him, look, I'm in the fire district. It doesn't consume all of your time. It's not like a county commission job. You can still work and be a practicing lawyer, but yet you can do things that make real change in people's lives, and I encourage them to get involved. I mean, I support Stan. He's an extremely bright guy who brings a fresh set of eyes and a fresh mentality to it. I think he would be a great asset to the district. And I encourage anybody that talks to me about it. I mean, I think that that's part of what you have to do. I mean, we live in this country where it's, as much as people want to complain about Washington and how bad it is and how bad things are, I mean, compared to the rest of the world, we're all still sitting pretty, you know. So the last thing that people need to do is just sit back and complain. If they don't like it, get involved, go run, you know, make a change, vote, or try and get involved and do something.
What's your relationship with the union, fire union?
I was endorsed by the fire union, 2396. You know, I obviously in the East Naples side of the union, there was a bit of a rocky start, not so with me, but they endorsed some Mr. Dan's, I believe, in the prior race that I won. But I came in at a time where there was an ongoing unfair labor practices lawsuit that's still going. There was a disclaimer of financial urgency in which the district, because of its finances, had to disclaim financial urgency, so they broke the union contract. And at that point, anybody in a commissioner seat wasn't on the smoothest relations. But you know, I wasn't actively involved in the negotiations, but I was involved in the peripheral. We rolled up our sleeves, we sat with them, we opened up all the books and finances and said, look guys, you know, the prior commissioners gave you guys a 27% raise. That was not a very wise thing to do at the time because we were going through a housing crash. Our budget and property values had dropped 43%. They had that cash money to give back to the members because of the conversion from the FRS Florida retirement to the 175. What they should have done is if they wanted to compensate them because they were behind on raises, they should have given them a one-time bonus or one-time payment, not made it a raise so that next year when you didn't have that free $1 million from the state, you said, oh, well, how are we going to pay for this? We were projected to go effectively bankrupt from all the financials that I've seen and from the way PERC has ruled in our favor. We sat down, I pried the union, they went through some tough things, you know, they didn't come in and demand a 27% raise, and if someone's going to give you money, there's not too many humans that are going to say, no, look, you know, you don't really understand what's going on here. You probably can't afford this several years. They recognized it. It was tough to go through, but we sat down, we opened the numbers, we opened the books, we renegotiated, we came to a contract that allows the residents of East Naples to have enough cash reserves to fund the services during the interim period before we get the taxes from the county, which puts us at $2.5 million that we need to cover that, plus leave us a chunk of money in case there's a major disaster and we got to call people up, or even a minor hurricane disaster can cause the use of those funds. And I think we're on a pretty good relationship. I went and sat with several members of the union body, East Naples, and got their endorsement a couple weeks ago. I talk with them when they want to. I've given my cell phone, made myself available. You know, in any organization, you're going to have some people that are upset. You can't put, 100 people into a company and have everyone be happy. It's just not the world that we live in. But my job as commissioner is to balance, the taxpayers, their safety, and their finances first, along with the interests of the union, the interests of staff, and hear from all of those different interests that sometimes they're competing. Sometimes the firefighters need more resources for pay. Sometimes they need more resources for equipment. There's not as much money available in the budget to do it, and we have to sit there and make the best decisions on to do with what we have. I mean, we don't have the ability to go out and, I'm certainly not going to go out and raise taxes, but we're not a profit company that we can sit back and say, all right, how do we crank up sales so we have more money? We get what we have from the taxpayers, which is plenty of money to survive on what we have, and it's hopefully going to be more than enough as consolidations move forward.
We've hit our 20 minutes here. Are there any final thoughts you want to add to anything we haven't covered here?
No, sir. I mean, I appreciate the time to speak with you guys and to the residents of East Naples, and hopefully my future constituents of Golden Gate and East Naples. I look forward to hopefully receiving your vote and continuing down the path towards consolidation, saving money, increasing and enhancing services, and cutting response times.